Hey guys, hey, this is Anne Marie, and this is the Anti HR channel. And welcome to the September edition of Can HR Do That? Um, we're going to go through some questions that people have submitted. In this session, what I do is I answer questions live that have been pre submitted by subscribers about things that have happened in the HR departments that they want to know whether HR can do. And so before we get into the questions, I'm just going to go over the ground rules. So these questions come from people who have submitted them in advance. That's required so that I have time to look at them and give them some thought before I answer. And they are submitted through the community section of my site. I usually will give a heads up a week out, which is what I did this time, that it was going to happen. Does it a week? Almost a week, a little under a week. And then folks get to submit questions. The ground rules are that it has to be HR related. It can't be about your manager. I ask that people not mention their companies by name or give any identifying information. And I also ask that people not submit questions during the session because I'm not going to answer them. I also want to give the caveat, of course, that this is not legal advice and that I cannot predict that what I say is going to be in alignment with what happens at your company. I'm just giving my professional opinion as a person who worked in HR for 20 plus years and oversaw HR for 20 plus years about what HR is likely to do and kind of give you some insights into how HR works and how HR professionals think so that you can get a better understanding of how decisions get made and why certain things occur in HR departments. So those are the ground rules. I always try to make sure I go through that. This is our second one. And hi there, Adina. Um, so this is our second one. And I'm going to get into the questions. I don't have a lot of questions tonight. I think I have 5 questions. So we may finish earlier than last time, but I have a max of 45 minutes that I will do this. If I get through it sooner, then the live will end sooner. But the cutoff is around about 45 minutes. So let's get into the first question. So the first question is, can HR mandate attending exit interviews when leaving a company? If a departing employee decides to participate in an exit interview, how honest should they be regarding why they are leaving? This is actually a two-part question, but I will answer both of them. But first, let's get to, can HR mandate attending exit interviews when leaving a company? Yes, they can. And they might say, in order to get, I mean, technically they can, but kind of sort of they can't, right? They can say you have to attend an exit interview, but they can't really say that you won't get your last check or that you won't get paid out for your vacation leave if you don't attend, right? They can't like hold something like that over your head, right? But they can tell you that you have to attend, but if you really don't want to attend, call in sick or just don't show up, cancel at the last minute. So in that way, you don't have to go. You don't really have to go. If you really don't want to go, don't go. I mean, what are they going to do? Fire you? You're leaving. But they can say you have to attend, but do you really have to attend? No. Now, I actually do recommend that people give feedback if it's solicited, but do so if there are things that you want to get off your chest, not expecting that they're necessarily going to address or fix the things that you bring up. Now, if you are concerned that that you might get blackballed or someone will say something negative about you, I'm sorry, excuse me. Someone will say something negative about you after you depart if you're too honest. An option is to leave feedback on a site like Glassdoor. But I do encourage employees to use the exit interview process to surface issues that they want to surface. You really don't have anything to lose. Most employers have policies where they are not allowed to say negative things about employees after they leave because they don't want to be sued for defamation or slander. So it's highly, nowadays people really don't do that as much as they used to do. Not saying they don't do it at all. People still talk informally about people. They do. But it's less likely. But if it's a concern, don't do the exit interview and then go on Glassdoor and say whatever you want to say. Right. And Glassdoor is a site where you can go log in and you can leave feedback about your experience at any employer and whatever issues you had. You can do so anonymously, and the comments that you put up cannot be removed from the employer, or so they say. And there are several other sites similar to Glassdoor that now exist. I think I did a blog post about exit interviews, and if I did, I will try to remember to drop them into the updated description of this video. But in my personal opinion, I do think that if you feel it is safe to do so and you are solicited for an exit interview, you should be as honest um, as you wish to be. I used to actually really try to encourage people to provide exit feedback because I honestly wanted it to use it to improve the work environment. But I can't say that every HR department is doing that for the same reason. So you know your department better and your company better than I would. So do so using some discretion. But if you feel that you feel really comfortable, you have a new job, you're not concerned about them having any impact on you finding a new job, and you want to be honest in your feedback, be honest in your feedback, or just leave a review of the company on a site like Glassdoor. And I think there are a couple competitors that you can use. Okay. So that's my answer to both of those questions. Um, the second question here is, can HR just bring someone back to work after they've been suspended without disclosing the quote findings unquote of the investigation? Is it even worth asking for clarification or just go on resuming work again? This is a very good question. So I'm going to make some assumptions in my response. I'm going to assume that this person was suspended and pending the outcome of some type of investigation in their workplace. And then they were told that they could come back to work, but they weren't told anything else. And they want to know whether human resources can do this. The answer is yes. And I'm going to give you some information around that. It is highly unlikely that HR will ever give employees a copy of any investigation that they have undertaken or any real substantive information about the outcome of investigations. Why? Now, if they determine that the employee has done something that put the company in a risk situation and they want to use the outcome as pretext to fire the employee, then they may tell the employee that based on the outcome of the investigation, they have decided to terminate them. But they usually won't give you a copy of the investigation, and they won't go into any in-depth um provide any in-depth information about what was found in the investigation. And the reason for that is it's simply a risk management exercise. To tell you too much could subject them to risk and future liability, right? So they just don't tell you because they're doing it to protect the company. So if they, for example, someone accuses a manager of sexual harassment, and they might have videotape or some recording or something to support their claim. So the company decides to put the manager that's been accused on leave with pay pending the outcome of investigation. Now, one of the main reasons they might do leave with pay is simply because you have something that seems more concrete in terms of evidence. If it's one person's word against another, they're probably just going to investigate, but they're not necessarily going to put anybody on a leave of absence. But if you provide some type of backup for your claim, like a recording or corroborating statements from other employees, then they might put the person on a leave of absence, but with pay. Now, if after investigating they determine that the claims are unfounded, they might bring the person back and not tell them they determined they didn't do anything wrong. They may tell them they determined that there wasn't any grounds um, to terminate them, or that they didn't find anything to substantiate the claim, or something to that effect is what they might say. What they're not going to do is give any of the parties copies of the actual investigation report. Usually the only way you're going to get that is if you go file a claim with the EEOC, you file a lawsuit, and they have to turn it over in what they call the discovery process, right? But they're usually not going to just voluntarily give that to you. They might, tell the victim who or the person who brought the claim, we couldn't substantiate your claim, or we were able to substantiate certain aspects of your claim, but we deter excuse me, I don't know why I'm having all these issues today. Sorry about that. Um, they may say, we couldn't substantiate the sexual harassment claim, but we determined that, there's training that needs to be done, or there's something like that, right? Or they may say, we've decided that we're going to move you to another supervisor or something like that, but they don't fire the manager, right? But if they come back and they fire the manager, right, that kind of gives you an indication that they found wrongdoing. Depending on how egregious it is, they might actually tell the employee, we determined that we substantiated your claim, and I'm talking specifically about sexual harassment. We substantiated your claim, and we decided to separate the manager, right? Or something like that. But usually, if they don't determine that there's anything that has been done wrong, they'll bring the person back, right? And but neither party will get a copy of the report. So it's not unusual for HR to not provide a whole lot of information related to an investigation. If they decide to let you keep your job, they let you know you're not going to be fired. If they decide to fire you, they tell you they've decided to let you go, but they're not going to give you a copy of the investigation, and they're not going to probably go into in-depth background about the contents of the investigation. They usually treat that as proprietary and confidential, and they don't share it with people outside of management. And even in management, people who they determine have a need to know the information. In my experience, that's the way it works. So, in response to your question about can they bring someone back without disclosing, yes. And usually that's standard practice, right? It's probably considered best practice, because if you um, give the report to anybody outside of HR, you could be putting the company at risk. So that's something that HR person is not going to do, and that HR people are trained not to do, and to not get into too much detail about contents of investigations that they undertake. Okay. Third question. HR made me work with a female coworker who was harassing me. I told them that I had filed a police report. They told me it had nothing to do with my job. It happened outside of work. We both work together. We are both LPNs. They just told the supervisor to always be present when she was around me. Can HR do that? As I often tell people, there's what HR can do, and there's what HR should do. I have lots of questions about this, but on the basis of what you have shared, my answer is, can HR do that? Yes. Do I think this is the way HR departments should deal with the situation that you've described, just based on what you've described? No. However, I'm assuming that they're taking the position that whatever is going on has not occurred in the workplace. As it has not occurred in the workplace, they do not feel that they have any responsibility to get involved, right? But since they have awareness that this has occurred and that it could now, turn into something in the workplace, it would seem to me that HR should take a different position than what has been described here. But it appears that this HR department has basically taken the position that unless you all get into fisticuffs in the workplace, they don't have to do anything about it. I think it's a very short-sighted um, approach to a situation like this, but it appears that is what they have decided. I don't know more than the details of what you've provided in this question. I would have lots of other questions, because I think more information would kind of help understand why they might have taken this position, because it seems like an odd position to me from a professional standpoint. If someone has um, claimed harassment in the work, not at work, but said someone's harassing them, and they are harassing them so much that they decided to file a police report, and both people work for your company, I would think that that would warrant an investigation. At a minimum, talking to both parties separately or together, and getting to the root of what's going on to make sure it doesn't turn into a workplace incident, which could then implicate the company for risk management if someone gets hurt, because now they are aware and have noticed that there's a problem. So it seems odd to me that they would take a position that as long as it doesn't happen at work, they don't have any responsibility. But based on what this person has asked, it sounds like that's the case. Um, but I have other questions and I don't think the person is here in the chats. I can't ask them. But based on what they described, yes, they can do that. Do I think they should do that? No, but yes, they can. Hi, Tika. Thank you. I appreciate that you appreciate my content. So thank you. So now, question 4. Can HR mandate attending? Oh no, I just answered that. Exit interviews. I already did that. We only have 4 questions then. So we have one more question. So this is going to be a short live. So we have one more question. My friend came back from leave of absence and they changed her manager, took her away from her regularly weekly meetings so she has little interaction with her team and changed her job responsibilities. What do you think is going on and why? My short answer is I don't know. I mean, I'm just being honest. I don't know what's going on and I don't know why it's going on. I can answer based on what I think the reasons or what HR might be doing, but I don't know what's going on because I would have a lot more questions. And you're telling me it's about something that happened to your friend and not something that happened to you. So I can't even ask you any questions. Um, your friend came back from a leave of absence and they changed her manager and took away her regular weekly meetings. I don't know because I would want to know what the leave of absence was in connection with. In other words, why were you put on a leave of absence? Because in order for me to have some idea and context for why they might have let you come back, one, why they would have changed your manager upon your return, but then cut you out of regular interactions with your team and change your job responsibilities is completely tied to why you went on the leave of absence. So without me knowing why the person went on the leave of absence, I can't even really give much of an answer. The short answer is whether they can do that. Yes, they can. And I think it's important to understand that most companies in the United States, a majority of states in the United States are at will employers. Okay. And what that means is you can leave for any reason and they can fire you for any reason. They can't fire you for a reason that is unlawful, right? So they can't um, fire you for reasons that are against the law, like for discriminatory reasons. They can't violate things like Age and Disability Act. They can't violate Americans with Disabilities. But barring that, and I have a roadmap where I kind of walk you through workplace rights, right? So if you want to be familiar with what your workplace rights are, I would suggest you grab a copy of that. They can't fire you for anything under those workplace rights that I talk about. They can't break the law to fire you. But unless if it doesn't have anything to do with any of those laws, your employer can let you go. And you can leave as well. So all of these different things that people are like, well, can they do that? As long as they're not breaking the law, they can do it. That's the rule of law. That's the rule of the rule of thumb that you should keep in mind. Unless you can show that what your employer is doing is breaking a existing law in some way, they can do the thing, right? So the key becomes as an employee is to educate yourself about what workplace rights exist and laws exist so that if your employer is doing something that implicates one of those things, you will be able to be like, hey, wait a minute now, you can't do that, right? But anything that doesn't fall under a law, they can do. So if they feel that you have done something wrong that warrants them investigating before they make a termination decision, they can put you on a leave of absence and they can decide based on what the issue is whether they're going to pay you or whether they're going to not pay you, right? Pending the outcome of the investigation. But they could also just fire you. But a lot of times employers won't do that because they have to take into consideration whether the person has any protected class or protected characteristics. They don't want to run afoul of workplace laws. So they will always engage in some kind of inquiry before they make a termination decision, which is why they will put people on leaves of absence. They will suspend people so they can look at what the issues are that have come up that might implicate them in other ways, right? But yes, they can tell you to go home and don't come back till they tell you to, while they try to figure out whether they need to fire you or whether you can keep your job. And they can decide that they're going to bring you back and they're not going to fire you, but they're going to put you in a different role. And sometimes they'll do that when the person is the accuser and not the accused, right? Depending on what the situation is, they might determine the best way to resolve it is to move you to another supervisor and move the person to another department and separate the people. I never think that that's the best outcome in most cases where a person is claiming bullying or harassment or sexual harassment or other types of illegal behavior. I always feel if you can investigate and determine that the manager has done something wrongful and that the company has been exposed because of the behavior of the manager should be fired. But if companies did that, I probably wouldn't even have an HR consulting practice. Unfortunately, many companies make a calculation that the manager is more valuable than you as the employee, even when you bring a valid claim. And so they circle the wagons around the manager because the manager is acting on their behalf and they feel therefore necessary for them to protect the manager. And so by the time they do any investigation and they determine, in fact, that the manager is wrong, they've already done all these other things to protect the manager that now implicates them. So one of the things they might do is try to find a way to encourage you to leave the company, right? By making your work environment more difficult when you return, or making your work environment difficult for you when you um, complain, which then implicates other, can also implicate them from a risk perspective. But a lot of employers don't think that far. So, they can do these things, but they shouldn't do these things depending on the circumstance. But a lot of the questions I get, here is like, can they put me on a leave? Can they require that I do this? As long as they are not breaking the law, yes, they can do it. Even though what they're doing may not be right, may not feel right to you, may feel unfair, um, and maybe even is unfair. If you can't show that they're breaking a law, then 9 times out of 10, they can do it. That's why I always tell people, workplace bullying in and of itself is not illegal. When people talk about gaslighting and microaggressions and tone policing, none of these things in and of themselves are illegal acts. They're only implicatable as illegal acts if they are done in the context of breaking a workplace rule or breaking a workplace law, if they're done in the context of discrimination, if they're done in the context of punishing somebody for taking family medical leave, if they're done in the context of going after somebody because they asked for reasonable accommodation, if they're done in the context of what's another example? Um, Going after somebody because you perceive them as being old and you would like them to leave, right? And they are over the age of 40, then it might implicate the Age Discrimination Act. So it's important to understand that, before you raise these things as issues, you need to understand that um, it's only a real issue in terms of a violation of the law if you can show that the underlying act that preceded that is illegal. So if someone's bullying you, what's the context of the bullying? If someone's, gaslighting and microaggressing, what's the context of their behavior? How are they treating other people in the workplace? Are they singling you out? Do you have a protected characteristic? Is their behavior indicating that the reason they're treating you the way that they are is because of your protected characteristic? These are the things that you have to think about, which is why I always talk about documentation. But don't just think about what they do. Think also about why you believe that they're doing it and whether you can prove it. Okay. So those are the questions. I didn't get a lot of questions this time. I only got 4 of them. Um, and so I will be, I'm looking at the comments. I don't think that there are that many people on here tonight either. So I hope this was helpful. I hope the responses to these questions was helpful. And I'm definitely not doing one of these in October. I'm going to be traveling and I will not be doing one in October. I'll, let you guys know if I decide to do another one in November. Um, and I hope that this was helpful. I hope that the videos are helpful. I always tell people if they have subjects they think I should talk about to, drop them in comments. Actually, I've gotten some good recommendations this month. I'm kind of busy, but I'm gonna try to make some videos before I get going. I'm getting ready to go get on a plane soon. So I'm going to try to make some content before I leave because once I start traveling, I'm not really going to have a lot of time to do it. But I do hope that this was helpful. I hope this live was helpful. I hope it was informative. And I will see you guys in the next live or in the next video. Okay. Thanks. Bye.